I think the more logical concern would be humans being programmed by AIs and turning into just a group of doom-scrolling, zombie-walking people.
Welcome back to AI Diatribe. I'm Jason Lowe. You can call me J-Lo, and this is part 2 of my conversation with IBM's Matt Konwiser. If you missed part 1, we covered the immediate job displacement happening right now and the economics of AI disruption. Here in part 2, we're going deeper. AGI timelines, why Matt thinks the real AI threat isn't killer robots, and what you can actually do to stay relevant. And I have to say, I think this episode may very well be my favorite discussion on AI Diatribe. Lots of good stuff. Make sure to let us know what you think. You can comment or even reach out directly at contact@aidiatribe.com. Okay, let's dive back in.
If I tell you to build a house and I'm giving you a bunch of nails and a piece of wood and a hammer, and I say, oh, don't use the hammer, you're going to be like, I'm going somewhere else and just going to get some lunch. You know, if you have a hammer, you're going to use it. So the challenge is on humans to make sure that we always invoke creative thought and critical thinking when we're using these tools, but it's not a direct causality that says using them creates cognitive decline.
I don't know. I'm going to give a contrasting opinion just for a minute because I'm curious to hear what you're going to say to this. So talking about this reminds me of the calculator analogy, right? Where everyone thought once we had calculators that suddenly no one was going to remember how to do math. And so calculators as a tool, once they actually started to become accepted, I mean, there was great pushback, but once they started to become accepted, calculation became a lot more efficient, a lot more effective, a lot more accurate. Yet people still study math in school, but they're still able to use calculation in work and in everyday life. But this is a little different because AI, specifically LLMs, they simulate the creative process. They simulate actually doing that thinking. We're not dealing with a hammer. We're not dealing with even a calculator. We're dealing with something that is a really super good simulation of what a human being would do. And so I see this as a little bit of a temptation that's hard for many people to avoid. Yes, I agree with you completely. Humans are going to actively need to engage that creative process and that critical thinking process. But there are going to be individuals that just simply don't realize that they're not doing that, or they're not sure what to rely on AI for and what not to rely on AI for. You mentioned hallucination. We all know hallucination is a really bad term. Let's just call it incorrect output. I mean, that's a good way to put it, I guess, if we're not going to call it hallucination. For whatever reasons, it does its very best to answer the question that is proposed or the prompt that is posed, and it's done by measuring a whole bunch of weights and measures on what it's been trained and trying to predict what it's supposed to say next. Whether it's accurate or not, it doesn't know. It's just trying to put what it's supposed to say based on what it received and what statistical analysis or prediction says it should actually output next. And so to human beings, it feels like they're actually having a conversation with an actual entity that has a brain and is thinking these things through and actually knows what it's saying, but it doesn't. It's just outputting what mathematically it says it should do. And so it's very easy for humans to fall into the trap of this is an actual entity that is saying what it thinks. This is an actual entity that has considered this before actually putting something out when it actually hasn't. Even these newer reasoning models is just a rehash of the old model in multiple iterations. It still is nothing more than a basic mathematical statistical output of what it should say next. And so different phase. Yes, it is a tool. Yes, it can be used like a tool. Yes, can we analogize it to a hammer in some respects? Can we analogize it to a calculator in some respects? But not all. And it is that difference that I think makes this much more dangerous for individuals as it relates to relying too heavily on these tools.
So I agree with everything you said. I don't necessarily think that's a counterpoint. I think it's more like an asterisk. Like I asterisked you earlier, you're asterisking me now, right? So the qualifier to that is, you said two things that really matter. Number one, people still have to make sure that they are using critical thinking and that they're going into this eyes wide open and they understand what it is. So I fully agree with that. And that's actually one of the conclusions in the paper as well, is that people should make sure that they're well educated and informed on the process of critical thinking before they start using AI. That was one of the outcomes of the paper. The other thing that you mentioned is that there are some people that are just going to simply choose to surrender to the AI. And it's the, what is it called? Thought vacations. Have you heard of this thing?
I have not, to be honest
So
with you.
this is if you search it, it's actually a thing going on thought vacations where people will wake up in the morning and from the minute they open their eyes to the minute they go to bed, they just ask an AI everything that they should do that day. And whatever the AI tells them to do, they just go ahead and do it. And it is an unfortunate consequence of having a system that is so accessible and so easy to communicate with and that appears to have emotions and expressions and cares. This is going to be one of those unfortunate side effects. What I'm hoping for is that when the new car smell wears off and it's not a novel thing anymore and everybody's got one, that there will be a balance that is reached and folks that are more inclined to surrender to the AI will start to be empowered by it and take control of it instead of just continue down that dark spiral.
Yeah, but that's an interesting thing because do people really want to do that? Because if you look at this a different way, thought vacations, it's a little less not having to think about things and it's a little more about accountability, right? If it's someone else that's dictating my actions, well, then I'm not responsible for the output or I'm not responsible for any negative repercussions. Oh, I'll take the positive repercussions all day, every day because, yeah, it was me. Whether or not it was AI telling me to do it or not, it's me that embodied it and I'm going to go ahead and take advantage of that. But if something negative or not quite up to snuff happens because AI was telling you what to do, then you can say, I was doing what it recommended I do and it was wrong. Not me.
Yeah.
It was wrong.
Well, and that's the going back to UBI, we have a problem. We have a cultural, societal problem where there's accountability issues, there's a blame game, there's passing liabilities. Everybody wants to be litigious about things. This is where things get really interesting. It's like the case with was it Air Canada, right, where the guy asked about the refund, the bereavement rate refund policy, and the Air Canada bot immediately responded saying, "Sure, of course that's refundable," and it actually wasn't. It, Air Canada was held accountable because they stood up the chatbot, so they had to honor what the chatbot said. So we do have there are still lines that are drawn fairly strictly about what somebody can and cannot get away with. Well, the AI made me do it. It's a new version of the Twinkie murder. Do you know about this one?
I do not know about that,
It
but it
was,
sounds
I
interesting.
think it was in
Please.
the late 80s or early 90s where a spouse murdered their significant other after eating a whole box of Twinkies because they were on a sugar craze or something, and they were found not guilty. They actually used a Twinkie defense. This is just a modern version of that. It's, the Twinkie made me do it. And, that's probably going to become a quote somewhere. The people need, in order for UBI to work, in order for AI for everyone, in order for democratization to work, people need to own and take accountability for their actions, for their decisions, for their choosing to use it or not use it, for the way they choose to use it. If we don't all own that as individuals and in communities, whether it's business or family, because by the way, disinformation, I mean, can disrupt a significant family, right? It's not just about business. You can use AI to do really mean things to your family members and your friends and on social media and notes to each other and emails and phone calls and impersonations with deep. New Jersey recently made it a felony for anybody to reproduce the likeness in image or voice of anybody else if that person did not give consent or finds it humiliating, insulting, demeaning, or anything else. Think about how subjective that is, right? I could take you and put your face on something and you could think it's hysterical and then it goes viral and all of a sudden you get offended and now it's a felony. Accountability is not on the model that produced it. It's on the human being that asked the model to produce it, right? So I think that it's all of it is ingredients in the same cauldron, right? All of it. So UBI, accountability, open source, freedoms, guardrails, personal accountability, proper usage, governance, and federal laws, state laws, all of these things have to go into this giant cauldron and something's got to come out that everybody's willing to eat. And I agree with you. I think we've got most of the raw ingredients, and I think a lot of them are getting poured into the cauldron. I just don't think we're ready to bake the recipe yet. And I'm not quite sure when we're going to get there.
I think you're right. You raised some very, very valid points. Now, one thing I would say in addition to that is that right now we're talking about, well, we're speculating about a lot of things that are possibly going to happen or that can happen up to the point of AI developing to this level called artificial general intelligence. And that is when the switch flips. So, for those that are watching, listening, that aren't completely familiar with what artificial general intelligence is, many people define it in many different ways. I mean, you're going to get a different definition for every person that you ask. But the general consensus, if you take all of these and kind of try and come up with something collective, is that an artificial intelligence entity will be able to do pretty much what a human being can do if they were sitting down in front of a computer. That's what AGI is. Whether it's they use a browser and go do things, or whether they're creative and writing something in Microsoft Word or drawing something in, Paint or something like that. It's whatever a human being could do in front of a computer, this artificial general intelligence entity would be able to do themselves. Now, it's interesting because if you ask different experts when we're going to hit the AGI level, you're going to get a different answer everywhere as well. Sam Altman recently was saying by the end of this decade, he thinks it might come faster than that. Elon Musk has suggested sometimes in the next 2 to 4 years. There are other people that are saying that it may not arrive until 2040, but everybody that we talk to or that we hear is revising things backwards. As we move forward in time and AI is becoming more capable, it's really funny. There's this trend. Everybody was saying 2045, then they're saying 2042, then they're saying 2039, then they're saying 2035. And now just about everybody's looking at before 2035, with many of them saying 2030 or sooner. And what's interesting is that once artificial general intelligence actually hits, it is estimated that AGI's intelligence is going to double every 18 months or less. Now, this is according to Ray Kurzweil and his models as it relates to the singularity in artificial general intelligence. But once AGI is hit, AGI is going to be able to launch other AGIs that collectively, as a bunch of AGIs, are going to help make things happen so much faster and work towards this level called artificial superintelligence, where AI far surpasses the capabilities of human beings. And man, talk about changes in the world and in life. When AGI hits, we're not going to be in the same world. Nothing's going to look the same within months of AGI being hit. And once ASI hits, artificial superintelligence, Star Trek, Star Wars may not do it justice. I don't know. It's going to be a really, really strange and different world. How far out do you think AGI is? Just out of curiosity, what does your gut tell you?
I'm going to give you the weirdest answer you'll probably ever hear from anybody on this question. I really don't give a shit.
Why? Tell me why.
I'm going to tell you why. So everybody used the Turing test as a gold standard for whether a machine could think. Not think like a human, because that's the wrong question, but whether it was capable of thought at the level of a human, not identical to how it works. Now we've got models that can easily pass a Turing test, not because they have human level thought, but because they've been programmed and designed so well that they can recognize sentiment and tone and analysis. They can infer parts of speech and hidden references in speech, and they can navigate around it and provide answers that are correct to the question. Everybody cared about whether something could finally pass a Turing test, and then nobody cared. Artificial general intelligence, it's a milestone, right? It's a hurdle because it means that the model is capable of doing things with a degree of autonomy that a human could do. It could, quote unquote, make decisions or reason. Now, there's also a school of thought that says that's never going to happen with large language models, which I personally agree with, right? You've got Yann LeCun talking about world models as being the real way to get there. And I agree that it may not be LLMs. I don't know if world models is the answer. And the difference, by the way, just since we are keeping this lower level, LLMs, large language models, are exactly what everybody talks about now, ChatGPT and Claude and all those others. It's a human interacting with an AI in human language. But that human language model understands human language, and that's how it's able to interact with humans. It's not because it understands the world around it and the nature of things and forces and gravity and the real world. It just does what it's told to do. It just happens to do it with humans in human language. World models are not interacting with humans in human language. They are understanding the entire real world, the natural order of things. The fact that trees use photosynthesis and chlorophyll to produce nutrients that feed tree roots, that are absorbing nutrients from the earth, that are created by bugs that die and decay. And all of this is part of how world models kind of reason and understand things. the way we interact with those types of models is still with an LLM, still with a human language translator. So when you ask me, well, when are we going to get to AGI? My answer, coming back to all of this other stuff, is I really don't give a shit, because we could functionally be there already. We just may not know it, because the models that we've built are so good at doing the things that we're asking them to do, it almost doesn't matter anymore. It's really just, it's a little milestone that somebody gets a little glass plaque that they put on a shelf saying, I built an AGI first, and then we move on with the world. The singularity is far more interesting. The singularity is sentience, is an algorithm code running in a system somewhere that wakes up and kind of reasons and thinks for itself, and then decides what to do and how to do it and what it needs to get the job done, and just starts, Lieutenant Commander Data, right? That's the singularity, effectively, if you've seen Star Trek: The Next Generation. Whether we get there in the next 10 years, I think, is largely going to depend upon the progression of world models and LLMs and even things like quantum processing and advanced computing hardware. I mean, there's a lot of things that have to come together in the physical world and in software design before we get there. But that's what I'm more interested in talking about than just AGI, because, I mean, we could be there already, and
We
it's just,
could be. Yeah.
you wouldn't know it, because the systems are so good at doing what they do that maybe it doesn't matter.
Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe they're trying to not let us know that it's already happened. Let's get a little paranoid here for a second. Let's say that LLMs are advanced enough. Now, I agree with you. I think large language models, that's the language element. Just because I know how to speak doesn't mean I know how to think. And the LLMs, they know how to speak, but are they thinking? I don't know. I don't see any reason why AI, or at least AGI, or even beyond that, ASI, or artificial superintelligence, which it sounds to me like you're kind of equating with the singularity, and I'm comfortable with that, saying that they're going to happen probably around the same time. Why can't it be a combination of artificial intelligence entities working in a cohesive whole? That's what the human brain is. I mean, we have different elements of the human brain that are in charge of different functions. In my mind, artificial general intelligence and even artificial superintelligence may very well just be a group of different collective things doing things. And the LLMs, like you say, could end up being that verbalization and communication element, saying and telling what it is that these other elements of the artificial general intelligence or artificial superintelligence are telling it to do. But what's going to happen when we hit that level? Who knows? I mean, I heard a quote the other day. It actually kind of cracked me up. It said, when we hit artificial superintelligence, it means that human beings are going to be like ants trying to guess what a human's going to do with an iPhone. Or human beings are going to be like plants compared to artificial superintelligence. That's a pretty big leap. The question is, should we be terrified by this, or should we be excited by this? I don't know. I'm a little bit of both.
I think it goes to the risks, right? Understanding the risks and understanding the use. I mean, the example I use, and when I do public talks, I use this example all the time. Everybody talks about Skynet, right? The Terminator. That's what everybody's worried about. For me, I'm not concerned about that. So I put up this image of Skynet and I said, don't be concerned about this. Be concerned about this. And it flips over to a picture of the Borg from Star Trek. And the reason why that's concerning is not that an ASI or singularity is going to implant microchips into all of us and turn us into cybernetic organisms. If you look at even things like TikTok and Instagram and Facebook Reels, the algorithms that they are using are programming us and turning us into drones. And if you ride a New York City subway, you can see that every single day, because people are sitting there like this, glued to their phones, just
doom scrolling.
And they are being programmed by AIs. When AIs get smarter, when we get to a super intelligent state, and its goal is to create peace or unity or uniformity or whatever it is, it's going to look at how humans can be manipulated and controlled and organized, and it's going to program us through that content to do exactly what it wants us to do, even if what it's designed to do is be beneficial to humans, because it sees that as the way to do it. That's what scares me, is, not the human race being wiped out, not, the ant and human with an iPhone analogy or anything else, but us willingly surrendering through the use of this content and dissemination and the ability for the ASI to control it so well that we lose freedom of thought, creative thinking, individuality, and we all just become doom scrollers and rely on whatever the phone tells us to do is what's happening. That's, I think, what I'm most concerned about. And there's been pockets of that happening already with disinformation campaigns. We've seen the effectiveness of it. There was even an article in The Atlantic in, I think it was October of 2022, or even earlier, that talked about how social media was being weaponized. Because there were certain things people could say, certain ways people could say it, certain content people could distribute, and it would program people to getting on board with a certain political leaning or a certain understanding of the way the world is, and start to believe that, to become indoctrinated. And that was long before generative AI was prevalent and could be used for that purpose. We already know how easy it was to be used then. It's that much easier now, and it's going to be a million times easier when ASI comes out, because the system can pivot that on the fly and do it in real time with no human interaction, with no specific human intent as the creative motivation to start the campaign. It'll just do it. And I think those are the things that keep me up at night, not the rest of it. Not the control or the takeover or the obliteration of humans or any of that stuff. I mean, sure, they could all happen. They're all possibilities. If you've ever seen the multiverse, you know there's literally anything that could happen. But I think the more logical concern would be humans being programmed by AIs and turning into just a group of doom-scrolling, zombie-walking people.
What you're talking about is the equivalency of putting us in a zoo. I mean, basically. Yeah, I mean, we are a victim of our own success. Human beings are not built to be as, well, at least in our brains and the way that we are biologically, we are not built to be as successful as we are. We have all sorts of mental hoops that we have to jump through just to keep ourselves on track and overcome our fight or flight reflexes, to overcome our propensity to take it easy once our things have happened and that all of our needs have been met and the like. And we are entering a phase that I think is interesting, at least as it pertains to self-awareness. Now, this is a thing that is a little bit of a diatribe for me, speaking about AI diatribe. I think self-awareness has gone down in society. I think people have their faces buried in their phone and in their devices so much, and they're so self-centered that they don't realize the impact they have on everybody. I can't tell you how often I see a reduction in civility, a reduction in awareness of the people around them physically. I'm talking about in a store. I'm talking about in a restaurant. I'm talking about walking down the street. People just aren't as courteous, and they're not as cognizant of the effect of what it is that they're doing has on others around them, because to everybody else, they're their own individual universe. Self-awareness has gone down. And when I say self-awareness, awareness of yourself as it compares to or as it contrasts to others in society around you. We are going to have to become more self-aware in order for us to recognize the impact that AI is having on us, on our lives, on our thought processes, on our attitudes, on our likes and our dislikes. Will we be able to fight it in the face of ASI? I don't know. We've already seen instances where AI, not even AGI, but AI in the form of an LLM, can be so much more persuasive than a human being can, to the tune of multiples, where LLMs can actually convince people of things much easier than another human being can convince them of things. So something's got to give. I think you're right. Do we head into sort of an area where we are pets? Or are we going to be able to maintain our autonomy and be able to do things and work in conjunction and in parallel with AI? Or are we some form of biological step every bit as much as the chimpanzee was an evolutionary step to the human being? I don't know. It's really an interesting scenario.
So my kind of closing thought on that one is very simple, and I'll tie it back to Star Trek again, because you brought it up earlier, which was, you've got all this advanced AI on these ships, yet there's still humans doing jobs, right? And I think the answer to that is two things. Number one, the AIs were designed and programmed with specific guardrails that say you have a swim lane. Your swim lane is to make humans' jobs easier, to support them, to coexist with them, but to never control them. And the humans understand that they, in order to create a society that works, all have to be relevant and critical thinking and apply themselves and do their role in life. And as long as that equilibrium is maintained, there won't be the risks that we're just talked about. If either the AI is designed in a way that doesn't have those safeguards, or the humans get too lazy about it or complacent about it, that's where things fall apart. And it's really still just incumbent upon humans, because we build the AIs, we program their guardrails, and we have to take accountability and ownership of our own actions. And if we do all of that correctly, we could end up in a very, very good place in a very near term. That's my hope.
So I am with you on so many things, and I am aligned with you on so many things, and it's actually rather reaffirming to have someone as intelligent as yourself actually thinking many of the same thoughts that I am, because that makes me feel good and I feel reinforced. And it's not even an LLM doing it, it's another human being. But one of the things that I think individuals listening to this podcast or watching this podcast are probably curious about, especially if they are laymen or if they are the everyday person, is where do I even start? I know that AI is a potential danger, but I also know that AI is a potential aid and an assist in doing things in the future. So where do I even start? I personally think that people should start playing with AI in any fashion that they possibly can and just play and experiment. And that can start with these free tools like we've talked about: ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, whatever. Just go on and start asking it questions. You can even ask it questions about how to use it. How novel is this that we have actually created this tool called an LLM, that we can send a query to an LLM on how to best use an LLM. There's not very many tools that you can. I can't ask a hammer, how do I best use a hammer? Can't do it. But LLMs are in a different category where they can actually guide us in more efficient and effective ways to actually utilize it as a tool. Don't you think? This is a kind of a different perspective and a different time and a different capability as it relates to tool usage.
Yeah, I do. And I'll give you a great example. So my parents are technology Luddites. And I think if they're ever listening to this, they would agree with that wholeheartedly. And they started using AI-enabled capabilities on their phones. And they are not calling me as much anymore. They're getting the information that they need when they need it. They're figuring it out. They're telling me, oh yeah, I used AI for this, I used AI for that. And it's all relatively benign, but it's keeping them engaged, and it's making technology and the world more accessible to them because they have access to it now and they're not afraid to play with it. Now, I also mentioned my background is cybersecurity, so I'm well aware of some of the risks of what they're doing, and I educate them on what to do and what not to do and why. But those things are always going to happen. I think that the easiest thing for people to start, the lowest barrier of entry, is to simply go to one of the big sites and just create an account and ask it a question. And the way I coach people to start this is, what's your favorite hobby and what's something you've always wanted to know about it? Ask that question and see where it takes you. And then just, as long as you're using it to learn. And this is, I wrote from ground up my own GPT. I called it Matt GPT. I launched it this weekend on LinkedIn this past weekend, and I released not the access to the app, but the code. So you can download a zip file, install it on your computer, and run it entirely locally, all on your own, without any internet connections, without any public models, nothing. It's all, and then I want you to go in and play with it and tweak it and make it your own. I want you to learn it and figure it out. But I didn't write it entirely myself. I vibe coded some of it, like we talked about in the beginning. The way I did it was I told the AI that I was vibe coding with, teach me, don't do it for me. So along the way, as I was writing this in HTML and Java and Python, all these languages that are really the backbone of AI, I was learning these things better as I went, because I was forcing it to not do it for me. And I think that's the evolution people need to take. Start with the basics, go in, ask it a question about your favorite hobby, and start to learn. But as you get more comfortable with it, don't be afraid to explore and push, and go as far and as deep as you want until you're not comfortable anymore. But keep pushing. See what its limits are. Ask it to do something that you think might be borderline, and see if it'll do it for you. and then try and trick it into doing it anyway if it doesn't want to, and test its boundaries. Test your boundaries of knowledge. Ask it to quiz you on things. These are the ways that we get better and can really use the tools well. And then if you get comfortable enough and daring enough, try and build your own and understand what these things really are and are not, because I can guarantee you, from having built one myself, everything you ask it, there's a line of code somewhere in an app in Python deep within what you're asking that helps adjust what you're typing so that the LLM can understand what you want and get it back to you. And you can play with that. You can manipulate it. You can get it to give you wrong answers to everything, right? You can get it to give you hyper accurate answers to everything, but in the context of arts or sciences, or make everything a Star Trek reference. Whatever you want, but you have the ability to create that if you're willing to learn it. And that's what I think, that's how we make it accessible. That's how we democratize it. Start by playing with something that somebody else already built, but make sure that you're learning while you do it, and then start to do on your own. And don't be afraid of that path. And you can even get the AI to help you along that journey, right? You don't have to cut it loose. You can keep it as a companion and a partner, but make sure it's continuing to teach you and not do for you.
There is a really good point, and that's the fear aspect. I think a lot of people are just scared because they feel like they're going to break something or they're going to go in and do something wrong. It's so funny being a tech support person for my family. There have been family members that have asked for help with certain things, and they're hesitant to do something because they're afraid they're going to break it, even in a situation where I know they can't break it. But they don't know that. They don't know they can't break it. I know they can't, but it's not like it's going to cause a world problem or something's going to blow up or they're going to lose access to something or, they're going to irreparably damage something that they've already done. LLMs are much the same way. There's very little you can do wrong in having a conversation with an LLM if you're critically thinking and objectively thinking about what the responses are, as long as you're taking everything the LLM says with a grain of salt, and as long as you're really making sure that you double check in instances where it's necessary to make sure that it's accurate, or maybe even make it cite its sources, because you can ask it to cite its sources, especially if you've done it with a search. But you're absolutely right. There is this element of fear that needs to be overcome, and people just need to just get out of their comfort zone, because the more comfortable you are with AI moving forward, the more easily you're going to be able to understand and handle what's coming. And what's coming is significant. And you have to have some level of comfort with artificial intelligence and how it works in order to not be completely overwhelmed and obliterated once these other things are coming at a much faster pace. It's just getting faster. The pace of innovation, the pace of new concepts that are coming to reality, the pace of new feature development, all of this is just snowballing. It's Moore's Law effect on steroids. For those that don't understand Moore's Law, I'll explain that in a different video somewhere else at some point. But let's just say that it's when things are going like this and then it just goes straight up. That's Moore's Law. So anyway, but I think that's really sound advice. Just get in, start playing with it, start doing something, anything, whatever you can, and teach yourself. That's very, very good advice. Matt, thank you. This has been fantastic. I am very grateful for the time. Maybe you and I could do some more episodes in the future. Maybe we'll talk about some other things. Who knows? Maybe we could have some guests where the two of us actually talk to some people about certain things. What are your thoughts on that?
Sure, that'd be very cool. I'd love that. You and I make a good debate team anyway, so it'd be fun
We
to,
kind of
to
do,
do
huh?
some more stuff.
All right. Well, Matt, thank you for your time. And there you have it. If you enjoyed this, make sure you like, subscribe, follow, and all the other things, and leave us a comment if you have thoughts. I have a feeling Matt will be back on AI Diatribe in the near future. And if you or your organization needs help with AI strategy, planning, or education, or something else, you can reach out to us at contact@aidiatribe.com. We'll see you in the next episode, coming soon.